There's a moment in every storm where the wind hits hard enough that you realise you can't stand in it alone. You picture a fire dying in the middle of an open plain, flickering, exposed, one strong gust away from going out. And that's where the old idea of circling the wagons comes in. People drawing close, pulling their battered carts into a ring, creating a wall where there wasn't one. A shield against whatever is coming over the horizon. When it comes to mental health, that circle is everything. The difference between being swallowed by the dark and feeling the glow of someone else's fire warming your face just long enough to make it through the night. Welcome to If These Trees Could Talk.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're recording on, the Wonnarua people. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging and honour the resilience of their culture, their stories and their unbroken connection to this country. We also want to acknowledge the Ngarrabul people of the Deepwater region in New South Wales, the country our guest Stu calls home. Their history, strength and enduring custodianship continue to shape the land in powerful ways.
Australia is a manufacturing society for poor mental health. Everyone's conceded defeat. Mr. Albanese, if you are listening to this at any point in time, if you would just give me and Shannon the keys to the car for a couple of weeks, it would fix this fucking crisis. You know what you should be doing, so do it.
Today we welcome Stuart O'Neill to the podcast, the author of the 4-time best-selling book Just One Reason, a tiny yet gut-punching mental health toolkit, a book that's found its way into nearly 40,000 homes across Australia. It's one of those rare books that doesn't just sit on a shelf. It starts real conversations, the kind that open doors, shifts thinking, and in measurable cases helps save lives. Stu spends his time flying into rural communities, speaking to people, sharing his lived experience, and holding space for people to share their own. Stu also is the owner and heart behind the Top Pub in Deepwater, New South Wales, Australia's first mental health pub. And this is where I met him because, of course, this was on my travel list. It's not your typical country pub. It's a place of kindness, connection, and the simple power of sitting with someone who needs to be heard. You walk in and it feels like home. Mismatched couches, art that invites conversation, a yellow ribbon on the wall reminding you that this place stands for something. I can wholeheartedly vouch that within these walls there is no judgment, no strangers, no pressure. Just genuine humans holding space for each other. As a person who values and understands the importance of peer support, I knew I had found my people. Stu wasn't downstairs that night. I met the community he had cultivated, and I loved them. Stu's introduction to me was when he checked the security cameras and saw some random lady slow dancing with her 11-year-old son while the locals cheered them on. And after a night that I will never forget, I needed to get to know the man behind it all, and I want you guys to know him too. Welcome, Stu.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you.
So the first time that I met Stuart, I had the hangover of the century. We called in and had coffee with Stu and his lovely wife, Susie, the following morning after such a wonderful night at the Top Pub. It is the commercial hotel. Is that the official name?
Correct. Yep.
If people wanted to Google it. But it is affectionately known as the Top Pub. And I had a night that was full of fun, laughter, connection, and authentic conversation with real people in a space that you have created. Do you want to explain to our listeners a little bit about why this was important to you?
Wow. Here goes 2 hours. So I've always had this vision that country pubs are underutilised resources. And so when you get a country pub, you get a commercial kitchen, you get meeting rooms, you get entertainment rooms, you get accommodation that's underutilised. And so you can repurpose areas of the pub at any time of the day or night that you want for any occasion. And so pubs are really like this multi-use, Swiss Army knife centre, so to speak. And they're not being utilised to their capacity. They're just open to sell food and beer and accommodation, but, they can provide like respite for people in accommodation in a crisis. We can afford comfortably to provide someone who's down on their bones, a free meal. You can give out a free coffee. There's a whole other sort of aspect of pubs, of a role that they can play in communities. And I just feel like doing it this way formalises it, because there's already pubs out there that are doing this for 100 years, no question. And it's not where the pub's located, it's who's located in the pub is what it really comes down to. Because there's probably 3,000 country pubs like this around Australia, and ultimately it's a conscious choice for the people that are running the pub of what they want to do inside the pub. So that particular night, when I looked in on the footage and thought, some lady's having a pretty good time out there, and our pub has sort of done like not Darwin process in terms of picking the strong, but it's had its own natural selection, if that makes sense. And the people that you were there with that night are an amazing group of fellows who are all burly blokes by, I guess, description. They have let all their resistance down and happily sing karaoke in front of one or many. And you can just see that I feel like when they're in our pub, whether I'm there or not there, but particularly when I'm not there, I reckon they think they're at home in their lounge room that just happens to sell booze.
Yeah.
And the way they conduct themselves and with others is just phenomenal, because you'd be amazed how many times a month someone knocks on the door of a pub or a bar while we're open that needs help of some form. And all of a sudden, these blokes spring into action as rescuers. Got a flat tire, got a broken car down, got something like. These guys don't realise how loving they are. I don't think. They just give of themselves, and as soon as someone comes in, for example, like yourself, and starts to reveal a little bit about yourself, they'll start to reveal a bit about their self, and then I know, like being a fly on the wall, so to speak, that they're actually very, very proud of their pub and what's happened here, because it used to just be a watering hole, and now it's a whole lot more than that. And some of those blokes that are in that room have fully experienced the love of our pub from, when they've been down on their bones a bit from a mental capacity. And so, I don't think it's difficult to do what we're doing. I think it's just a choice.
And when you build something like that, the right people come.
We've got a chef here at the moment who's having just an ongoing hourly day-to-day battle from suicide. And so it's not just who comes here to have a beer or a feed, it's actually within our staff as well.
Yeah.
And we love that. And it's a real reflection of the microscope of, even in a staff of 10, there's 3 here that are deeply struggling with their mental health, including me. I'm one of those 10. But, this week I was away for work again, doing what I do, with the book and stuff. And my wife told me that the chef opened up to him and revealed that his former partner and said, why don't you just top yourself and you'll never see your kids again, and you're no use to society, and it just breaks my heart to watch him. He's absolutely suffering. He's got no wagon around him other than us, and he's got a lot of things going on in his space. Drugs, court cases, ex-partner, not seeing kids, no driver's license. Like, everything's against the poor bugger. But on the night, Wednesday, the week before, we had a wake in advance for our pub dog. So we decided that we'd bring Stan into the pub and have a wake for him while he's around, rather than we all sob the next day when he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so during the course of the night, we've got like a big giant blackboard near the pool table, and I'd had a couple of glasses of water that were coloured, and anyway, I just went and started to draw on the big blackboards. And it was a silly, cheeky photo of my version of what Stan looked like, and I gave him a really large penis, and a big set of balls, and just silly stuff, right? Like as my farewell sort of thing. Anyway, so our staff member was sitting at the bar, and he had a pen in hand, and he was sketching at high speed, really, really high speed, and you couldn't believe that in the space of 3 minutes, what started out looking like scribble, because his hand strokes were going this fast, they're tiny, and all of a sudden there's a ship coming out of the waves.
Wow.
I'm like, are you serious? And I said, oh, you've got to get on that blackboard. And he's like, no, I'm not that good. I go, no, you're amazing. And in that moment and that night, he had an immediate new connection internally with the pub. Something went on, and I think it was that we validated his skill, not just as a chef, but we validated that he's got this whole other side of his life, and he was just so deeply in love that night of just the moment and what we're doing, caring for a dog, drawing on the blackboard, the camaraderie. Like, we shut the pub and opened the till, if that makes sense. No one paid. It's like, it's a week and we own a pub, and from here on in for the rest of the night, it's on us, because it's our pet and we can do what we want to do in our own pub. So he went up to the blackboard and just did some amazing drawings of Stan. And then there's a little, I don't know if you remember, a thing called, at school, I'm a lot older, it used to be called foo. Like, you'd have these little hidden faces and things. So it was just remarkable, and artsy's thing.
I imagine when you heard about his story that it hit pretty close to home, because there's some parallels there with your own.
Absolutely.
And just share what you feel comfortable sharing. Obviously, if people read the book, they'll get a more in-depth version of your personal story. But that lead up, you were not somebody who had flagged yourself as, oh, I need to be really careful of this. Suicide is a, real problem in my life. Your crisis was quick and brutal. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about that? And then we can move into how that push forward into your capability of tricking your mind and then going on to help thousands of people in this country.
It's really interesting, I feel that this is just almost new to me, that I hadn't really realized that until, some interviews and things. And I feel like, in a sense, when my crisis went from 0 to 100, and I had nothing prior to that ever, it was like I caught a virus that hasn't left.
Mm.
And every day since then, I think about, I've had enough. Like, just exhausted for a whole lot of reasons. And so I wasn't really aware until a conversation recently that it came from 0 to 100 rather than it had been brewing for 5, 10 or 20 years. And unfortunately, I haven't found the button to turn it off.
Mm.
So all I can do now is trick my brain and teach it to tell it to piss off.
I think train your brain sounds better than trick your brain, because it does eventually become who you are, this when you train your brain like this. I know I'm very much a daily gratitude person. And now, when I'm feeling low, I start thinking it's time to get the gratitude journal out. And then once you get into that habit, you're seeing the things that you're grateful all the time. I don't think you're tricking your brain. I think that you're doing the work.
Yeah, possibly. I guess I'm less complimentary of myself than the way you describe it. But to me, I'm like, you bastard. I've got this voice going on in my head, and it's like, you want to trick me? Fine, I'm going to trick you. So to me, it feels a bit more like stuff you, rather than I've gone out and run 10Ks and I'm training for something. It just feels like, we were in an arm wrestle and you can bugger off because I'm a competitive beast.
Let's explain to people, Stu, how in that moment you tricked your brain. Because at that time you weren't trained. You might be now, but when you first put this simple yet profound concept together, which saved your life and many others since, let's talk about that moment where you said fuck you to your own brain and what happened after that occurred.
When all of this had its first rearing of its head, I was overseas in Taiwan, and I got just a text message that you never want to get. It was the shittiest one of my life, so to speak. And in that moment, I'm just like, fuck, I'm done with the content of what was in that text message. And it came from a provider, not from a partner. But it was the partner's words that was in the script that came. When you do a online clairvoyant psychic type call, it seems like they're written or you type. The person who's seeking the assistance must type what they want. The money got paid out of my card, which as a family, that's just what happens, I guess, sometimes. And for some reason, when they sent through the receipt of that session, I got the transcript of what was said. And so reading the transcript was brutal. That, I knew in that moment that not only I knew my marriage was going crappy, but it's absolutely over. And my wife has absolutely moved on and has absolutely got a new man. And she's convinced that he's going to be a better parent to my boys than I will be. So, it's a big dagger.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I'm not good enough. And so that was it. I just, from that moment on, that button got pressed. And I haven't unpressed it since, which really fucking shits me. It's just all I do now is manage it. It doesn't have an off button. And I don't know how it came about from a, psychiatry aspect, but it's there and it's real and it's daily and it shits me. And so all I can do now is go, oh, well, don't waste a crisis. Let's turn it into an opportunity. And so at that time when I was over there, I did what I needed to do to make a simple investigation for what was about to happen to me. And my plan was that it would just be a stupid tourist accident rather than anyone would ever think I've done what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the way there, I realized that, it's pretty selfish to involve another person in taking of my own life. And it overrode my, choice to want to check out. Is somewhere deep inside, another voice came up and said, you're a bit of a shit if you do this to someone else without their permission. And so somehow or another, a bit of empathy came up in me and it changed my mind. And I didn't realize at that time that was my just one reason. It wasn't until now that once the button got turned on, it's been a constant ever since. And it's after a period of time, I became aware of that I only needed a reason. And then a really great thing happened, which I haven't shared too widely before. So at that time, I opened up an espresso bar that was like a hole in the wall out the front of Coolangatta Airport on the Gold Coast. And from day one, the way that I'd set it up with its design and stuff, it was tiny, really shoebox tiny, is I did it as a piss take of Qantas Club. So it was called, the coffee shop was called the Gate Lounge. And I managed to acquire through I'm good at finding stuff, is I found a pair of business class seats out of an aeroplane that was for sale on eBay or Marketplace or somewhere like that. So they were the two main seats in the shop, and there was only room for one more chair, and the rest was just counters and a fridge and things. And so when people did want to stay for the coffee, because it was more of a grab and go place, I'd be like, two older ladies that can come in, I'd flirt with them and say, "Hello, ladies, welcome aboard. And would you like to sit in 1A and 1B today?" Right? And they were proper chairs, so it was really cool. But very quickly, the shop became a counsellor, not just for me, but for my customers. And I reckon that's part of where the seed for the pub came from. Is I watched quickly the relationships that developed in the shop, and so my customers were my informal counsellors, because they got to know me that I was going through like hell as a divorce. And my ex-wife would continue to turn up at the coffee shop because she liked the coffee. And, in my mind, it's like, that's not your place anymore. We're not married. We didn't do this together. This is my business. But she just liked the coffee, and there's still obviously a connection there for the two of us. But the coffee shop became a counsellor, and vice versa. And I got to know a particular fellow that lived in a 3-piece suit and a fantastic briefcase who was homeless. And so he would go up to the Gold Coast Casino on a daily basis because he could sit there unjudged and somehow manage to get a bit of food and whatever. It was a comfortable place. It was air conditioned. And rather than what else is he going to do to pass his days, he disguised himself as just any other punter. And so I got to meet lots and lots of people through there. And the coffee shop really, really was a saviour and an eye-opener to show me like what's possible in community with just one little tiny speck.
One of my firm beliefs is that when you share your own vulnerability, you invite others into that space with you, and you're automatically giving them permission to do the same. And I think that in itself is at the crux of suicide prevention, not just in the way that you have written your book and the little toolkit that comes with it, but that ability to be able to have a conversation with someone and that feeling that comes over you where you think, this person is safe for me. And that only happens when you expose your own tough stuff. So it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that you have followed this business model where these communities or even just connections have been born. You messaged me after you listened to my lived experience episode and said, I resonate so deeply with some of the things that you've said, but the experience is so different to men. And you talked about how lucky I was to have people like Megan and my friend Rachel, who did that interview with us, who rallied around me in those toughest moments. And that experience isn't always available to everyone. And we did touch on that. I have immense gratitude for the people in my life and their capability to be able to sit in really hard spaces. When you were going through that crisis, and you strike me as someone who probably throws yourself into work, you're very passionate about the things that you do, and they all have really strong grounded motivation. But did you have a support network at all? And was there people who you reached out to that perhaps didn't reach back in the way that you needed?
The coffee shop became my support network,
mm-hmm.
and vice versa. So the circling of the wagons happened within the coffee shop, and a really good friendship developed with one of my customers, Sarah, who worked in mental health. And we would sometimes in the afternoon just close the doors and have half a dozen people in there, and we just have this big, amazing chat with each other. And we're not trading anymore. We've done enough for the day. And that really was my circle. I would say I've never been more lonely going through a crisis is that there is no one. And I was trying as best, and I probably failed, but I was trying as best to not want to tap in and have my children to be my support network. Yeah, I would say that's probably as lonely as I've ever been. And I've had lots of lonely spots since then. But without the shop, I was dead in the water. There's no doubt. I had no circle other than my mum.
Yeah. Let's talk about that circling the wagon metaphor. I did see the artwork in the pub.
Good.
And I think, is it Matt? Is it Matt that's written on the tent in the middle?
It could be. Each piece of artwork that I had done was done based on a specific situation that had come across me through either our online support group or a personal letter that's been written to me from someone who's read a book and things. So each one of those things has been inspired by someone. So I think it might have been Matt from memory.
Yeah. So can you explain what that metaphor means to you, the circling the wagon, and what it looks like, especially in relation to men's mental health? Because I think this is a really unique perspective for a male and a female, both with lived experience, to be able to explore the differences between what this experience looks like between genders.
Sure. So having watched, lots of Western movies over the years, and more so when I was a kid, I think there seemed to be more Western movies around. Over night time, when they'd done their 30 kilometres of, whatever, walking, towing their wagons and so forth, and wherever they set up, is there was no parking spaces in those days. You can just park wherever you want. So they always formed a circle. And it's not to protect themselves from wind and all sorts of things. It's to protect themselves from attack. And so they would all sit inside the circle and be a protection to each other. And so I've always sort of liked the concept of like circling the wagons, is that inside that area is the safe space. And I just think it's a very logical sort of like, example of what needs to happen is like people gather around, when someone's sad or someone's celebrating, it's always a circle. A whole lot of what I think about me is that like I'm a footy shorts, thongs, T-shirt type of person, 24/7. And I don't think of myself as having a low IQ in that regard. I just think of myself as like, I'm smart in a completely different way, if that makes sense. And I feel like I can see really basic solutions that are staring others in the face. And that's sort of my own internal language. So I can solve stuff and I can see solutions, and I've no idea. You can't train for that. You just either you can or you can't sort of thing. And so that's me. And so the Circle of the Wagons is just something that I've really, really evolved into our support network and in conversations with people, and go like, who are your wagons? And unfortunately, when I talk to men and have generally one-on-ones, but if I'm even in a group of men, I just want people to stop and think, even for 30 seconds, and count silently how many wagons you've got. And most of us don't have one. Not one. Recently, I reached out to a really good friend of mine, a long-term friend, and he comes out to the pub every year to watch the AFL grand final with another group of friends from where we've moved from. And I was in a really bad way that weekend. I almost didn't want them to come out because of how bad I was. And so I sent one of them a text message on the Sunday morning. I said, please keep in touch. I said, I'm in a really, really, really fucked up bad way. And his text back was, you'll be fine. And I haven't heard from him since.
Yeah.
And that to me is just so reflective of what's happening out there for men. I don't think it's that we don't have a strong enough friendship, because he drove 4 hours just to come and enjoy a ritual where we watched the footy final together. So I feel like I can tick that box that it's got nothing to do with the quality of our friendship. And when I look around in those sort of situations, is men don't have a Teledex of numbers who they can ring and count on, and just when they need it.
I want to just give some perspective to the difference in the way that looked for me. When I went into hospital after a non-fatal suicide attempt, my Wagons put together a private group chat behind my back and said there was a few people within that circle that were privy to the information of what had occurred in its entirety, and there was other people who were aware I was in hospital but wasn't actually sure why. And without disclosing any of the reasons or the things that had caused my crisis, while respecting my privacy, those girls put together a group chat and said, Shannon's in hospital. Scott's on his own with the kids. Can we organise for meals to be dropped off for Scott? Shannon doesn't have a phone, so we can't directly support her. But what we can do is make sure life on the outside keeps going so she can step away and do the things she needs to do for herself. So my family had school drop-offs organised. We had food being delivered for dinner. We had friends that were checking in and inviting Scott to go places, so his whole life didn't revolve around just being a dad and going to the hospital to see me, but he had outs where he could just step out and not think about those things. That's what a wagon circle friggin' looks like. And there is a stark contrast between that experience, I think, for men and women. The thing that gets me about that metaphor too, Stu, is that if you were on the side of the road and your wagon broke down and you had a box of hammers in your wagon, 10 blokes had come out and pick up those hammers and help you put your wagon back together. But if you're laying in the back of your wagon crying, they might walk past and look in and say, you're right, mate, but they're not circling around that wagon to check back in and see if you're okay in half an hour's time. Where do you think that comes from? Because men, when there's a problem, they are the problem solvers. They're the problem solvers in my life. I'm 100% sure they are in your life.
Right now. He's out solving problems for me right now.
Yeah. When it's a physical problem, men are very good at doing that. And I know some of it is societal views, because I think women in society are encouraged to talk about it and men are encouraged to get on with it. How do we shift that for men in our country?
Wow. Now, this what I'd like to do as a 3-season answer. I think first and foremost is people that get into the wagon are people that actually give a shit. Like deep down, they give a shit, as opposed to, yeah, I can nail that back together. That's helpful, and it might be very, very needed in that moment, but it's almost a superficial thing because you can see that they cut your lawn or they've banged a bit of timber back together. I think perhaps, and I don't know because, it's not, I haven't done this study, it's just my whole life's based on instincts, is I think men have their own internal things going on, and helping someone else deeply emotionally is actually a trigger for themselves for something that's happened to their life. And so they have a barrier because they don't want to go there because they've actually got their own trauma and they don't want to unpack it. And so helping me might hurt them. And I don't know, but I think that would be something that would be very easy to scientifically research.
Mm.
I think also it's very hard to get in the wagon with them. If they're not opening the door for you, how do you, and we've had conversations before about how you start those conversations, but I think men as fixers think, well, this person, we're used to listening. I'll listen and not need to give a solution, whereas men, and we have these conversations, we talk about them all the time. Honey, this is a conversation that I just need you to listen to. I don't need you to solve my problem. A lot of men don't like to talk about their problems because they can't see how the person they're telling can fix that problem. So loving the wagon analogy, how do we get these people to open the door and let people in?
It's literally one person at a time. I think I've like a grand idea of training community around Australia to become accidental counsellors. And, that I think that honestly, at some point, I think I'll get to execute that because I know exactly what to do, I feel. And that in the space of 3 months, we'd have 10,000 new accidental counsellors around Australia and informally formalise it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And then I think what happens is some people just don't want to be involved. And so they walk past, they see it and they walk past.
Shannon, I did my homework and I did listen to a little bit of what you have put into the world already, Stuart. And while we're talking about metaphors, you have a metaphor that relates to what you're just talking about in terms of walking past or doing something about it. Can you tell us about the piece of paper, the rubbish metaphor?
Yep. So I feel, as I was saying a few moments ago, is I think I can do basic things that anyone can understand. You don't need to read a book or have a big education to understand those sort of metaphors. So when I'm talking to a group, I'll just grab a piece of paper and just scrunch it up and throw it on the ground. And then we can all look at it and say, what is it? And we can all look and go, it's litter. So if I walk past that now and don't pick it up, am I as complicit as the person who threw it there? And that's how mental health is I actually firmly believe that most humans can see someone's poor mental health very quickly and they just choose not to ask. They don't want to be involved. I don't know you well enough, or I don't have the confidence to ask, or I'm too busy, or whatever the inner voices are for that person. I actually think most people can identify a person that's in crisis and not going well, and they choose to do nothing. And so putting the bit of paper on the ground is to go you're part of the problem now, not the solution, if you just leave it there.
Yeah. I think sometimes in the conversations that I've had publicly around my own suicide attempt, a lot of people have reached out to me afterwards when they may have found themselves in a situation where they're supporting someone who's in crisis and they don't know what to do or what to say. Stuart gave me 15 of his books, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later, what we're going to do with those 15 books. But I devoured that as we drove away from the pub. And my first take of reading that book was every single person in this country needs to have a copy of this book in their handbag, their briefcase, their desk at work, in the glove box of their car, for that time where they see the crumpled piece of paper and they look at it, and if that hesitation creeps in and they say, I don't know how to pick this up without making it worse, I don't know how to pick it up without damaging it further, I don't know what to do with it when I pick it up and I've got it in my hand and if it's too heavy for me to hold. Your book is the answer to that problem. Because if everybody carried this with them, and it's little, I've got a little copy of it here, it's little, it can fit in your pocket, that's on purpose. Yeah. You can read it on the bus because the cover is, no one's going to be threatened by looking at this lovely little grey artwork. We carry this book with us, and when we see the crumpled piece of paper, instead of having to solve the issue of the crumpled piece of paper and how it got there and who put it there and is it actually my problem that it's there because I wasn't involved in it getting crumpled up and ended on the ground, you hand that thing that seems really hard, this book, and you say, I've got this. I want you to read it. I'll check back in. It only takes 10 minutes to read, but for someone who's struggling, it might take longer. I'm going to check back in with you next week and see what you think. This book, Stuart, is the answer to that exact metaphor. And I hadn't thought about that before in this exact moment. But I just think everyone in this country should have a copy of this with them. Every corporate space where it is, especially male-dominated spaces, you know, manufacturing, construction, all of those things, this is the thing that can break that barrier. Was that your intention in writing it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Far out. I can't believe how succinctly and beautifully you put that then, because I agree with you. And that's exactly right, you know. And I'm a chatterbox, so I'll segue again for a second, is you wouldn't believe how many times I've been contacted by a person who accidentally received a copy of the book. And they're going, I don't know how I ended up with this book, but I did, and thank you. And one story that, you know, comes to mind is a neighbour opened another neighbour's mail. You know, curiosity got the better of them. They're like, what's this? And even though it was addressed to the neighbour next door and got delivered to the wrong house and all the rest of it, curiosity got the better of them and they opened it. And so the person reached out to me to say that something had just happened in their life, and they felt like it got delivered incorrectly on purpose. And I've lost count of the number of times that I've had good stories like that, where the book finds the right person at the right time, all the time. Even when you're talking about with corporates, and I say, don't just leave them or put a sign up that they can come and, you know, get one if you need it. I said, put them in piles of 10, because then no one wants to take the last dim sim off the plate. If it gets down to 1, put another 5 there. In terms of when I wrote it, I feel like as a male, we want to get on a plane in Melbourne and get off in Sydney, an expert. Yep. We want a degree in that 50-minute flight. We don't want to sit and read a 300-page novel or do extra classes and other things. We want the shortcut. It's like, tell me everything you know in 10 minutes, and then I'm good to go, thanks. And so the book's concept is all based around, when you're feeling pretty crappy, if I was to expand my book and make it a normal paperback size book in 300 pages and I hand that to someone else, I'll just put extra weight on their shoulders, because I'll go, somewhere in that book in those 300 pages might be just what you need to read, and it could take them a month to do it. And so when you're in a crisis, you need to be able to get to that part fast. It's your 000 in your pocket is how I see them. It is 000. The number of people that have written to me and said that they've read the book every week or every day for a year is just incredible. And so that was exactly the intention, is be small, be discreet. No one needs to know what you're reading. It's no one else's business what you're going through. You need to be able to sit in public, or you need to be able to give that book to someone without a big headline on the front that screams, I'm not well. Here you have this. It's your set of floaties.
Yeah.
And you can blow and put them on your arm just when you need them.
100%. Out of the copies that you gave me, Stuart, I gave a copy to my eldest son. He's away this weekend shooting with his mates out at Coonabarabran. Whole group of them going out there, and, you know, they'll be sitting around having beers. And I said to him the exact thing that I just said to you. You need to put this in the glove box of your car, because you don't know when you're going to need it. And at times, he possibly needs it. And when we're talking about young men circling the wagon, so my son is 22, and at 17, he lost his best friend in a horrific car accident. And what made that harder was that their other friend was the driver of the vehicle that killed him. I watched this group of 17-year-old boys in the most extraordinary grief stand around in my driveway and talk about how hard it was going to be for the young man who was the driver of that vehicle and what they could do in the coming days, weeks and months. So they could provide the wagons to put around him, and they did, because 17-year-old car accidents, every media outlet in the country's got hold of that. And the online banter around young men dying in car accidents is pretty brutal. So what they did was position themselves around this young man who had just been involved in the death of their best friend. And they kept that wagon circling. They protected him from the outside stuff. They supported him through everything that came next, the court and counselling and all of the things that he needed to do to make it through, because they didn't believe he was going to. I'm incredibly proud of those young men for that moment. And he then lost another friend at 21 to a car accident, and he's recently just lost his child in a premature birth. He's also got a mum who attempted suicide. He's a young man who is no stranger to grief and trauma. And I watch him make his way through the world with his own struggles, but with the capacity to be able to hold space for others. And talking to you reminds me a little bit of him in the sense that you have taken these really hard things that have happened and turned it into the catalyst of what or who you've become and what you put out in the world and how you help other people. If there is a message that we can leave for men who are listening to this podcast today, because I'm sure that there's some of them that would see themselves in your story or my story or the stories that we've shared, what is the one thing that you would say to them that could be the thing that helps them be able to circle that wagon?
I already know that answer, and it's step forward, step up, step forward, put your hand out. Is you've seen it, you know what you should be doing. So do it. Don't avoid it, do it. Take a risk and do it. That's pretty much how I see it. It's an interesting thing that you raised then, Shannon, and I think this is an amazing opportunity globally, but certainly here in Australia. And Mr. Albanese, if you are listening to this at any point in time, if you would just give me and Shannon the keys to the car for a couple of weeks, it would fix this fucking crisis. Young men have walked straight past us 50 and 60-year-old males in understanding the complexity of mental health. I actually think it's the 15-year-old bracket cohort that are actually going to be the leaders and the saviors of all things mental health, because I've witnessed what you've witnessed. And 50 and 60-year-old men, we think going to the pub with our mate and just getting pissed is his wagon. And it's not. It's nice, I guess, at times, and there's a time and a place for that. But that's not therapy. What the kids are doing, and I've seen it a number of times already, like my youngest came to me and at our house, because it's my book, so there's plenty of books, but he said, but he still asked. And Oscar said, "Oh, Dad, is there any chance I can grab a book for one of my mates? He's having a bad time. His girlfriend's dumped him and he's talked about suicide and we want to support him." 50 and 60-year-olds aren't doing that. I actually think it's profound that you've just shared what you do have, Shannon, is like, that's where the solution is. We don't have to wait another generation. They're already alive and kicking now. We need to go and grab these 15-year-olds and start developing their training and awareness to go, when you see it, do. I think they're so much more in tune with their fellow friends, male or female, than us 50 and 60-year-olds have ever been. I don't think that we're beyond help into learning how to circle the wagons, but we're busy, we've got businesses, we've got jobs, we've got stress, we've been divorced, we're scarred, all those other bits and pieces. Like, the opportunity is now. with that age bracket to go, righto, let's turn them into the country's accidental counsellors. Because I've seen magic so many times like that it's absolutely beautiful. I'm just going like, why in the friggin' hell can't us 60-year-olds do that? And I think that's where our opportunity starts, is right now. There is like teach circling the wagons in school.
Yeah, we have this conversation a lot on the Supers Feelers podcast, which I'm a part of around teaching young people the skills that they need, like emotional regulation skills, DBT, which is a form of therapy, which is the number one form of therapy for suicidality, with really great measurable results to its success. Why can't we be teaching young people some of these skills? Why are we waiting until someone is in a mental health crisis before they get access to this type of toolkit? I was in a private hospital with private health insurance after my suicide attempt. That insurance company paid $985 a day for me to be in that hospital. They would not cover the therapy, the DBT therapy, that would stop me needing to return to that hospital again. There are so many issues on so many levels, and the fact that you are talking about this accidental counsellor concept, why isn't people throwing money at that? This is where we change the foundation. This is where peer support, lived experience is so powerful. And we have a nation full of people who have in some way either experienced suicidality themselves or supported someone through it or love someone who they have lost to suicide. These people are the crux. 1 in 2 young people in Australia will be affected by suicide before the age of 25. 1 in 2.
I hope this podcast never ends. I'm getting coached at the moment, informally, on honey wins more wars than vinegar. But I'm a vinegar person. I'd rather call it as I see it. So it's a big self-development time for me in my life. And I'm actually enjoying choosing my words better rather than in the past. I don't mince words. I just call it as I see it. And so I'm finding that there's a hybrid somewhere in the middle, but part of me is still prickly for things that I'm passionate about. And I feel personally that I'm more than willing to be that person in Australia and put the whole country on my back and go, if no one else is going to drag this train forward, fuck it, I will. And someone has to, and I'm happy to be that person because, Australia as a nation and in the media, there's constant stories that we've lost our capacity to manufacture things. We don't make cars anymore. We don't make shoes. Everything's coming from China. It's all offshore. But what Australia has absolutely mastered, especially in the last 20 years, is Australia's a manufacturing society for poor mental health.
Yeah.
It's the one thing our government manufacture on a daily basis is a whole set of systems and bureaucracy that's causing shit mental health. It's like Australia's in a mess because of the mess that they've created.
Yeah.
And that's just not all government's fault, but allowing banks to do what they do, where all the banks really, really interested in is not the customer at the counter. They're only interested in the stock price. And so they make brutal rules at the top that flow down to everyday people that cause poor mental health. And we've allowed it to happen. We're a country that manufactures really shit circumstances by boards and CEOs and big entities in government that are just designed to fucking piss us off. And until we can get back to just being decent humans from top to bottom, this isn't going to get better. The only chance is maybe that these 15 and 20-year-olds end up on boards and become CEOs, and they put some compassion back into the world rather than just ruthlessness.
Yeah.
One of our suppliers They made a mistake, forgot to send our kegs down. We had to order extra kegs. And then they charge us a second amount of freight. It's like, it's not even worth getting on the phone. It's only $30, but the principle of it stinks. It's like, this is your mess. And now you're making me pay a double delivery. And it's not going to send us broke. It's just the principle. And it's pointless trying to get on the phone and talk to someone in Singapore or the Philippines and resolve this. It's just pointless. You just wear the $30 and go, asses.
Mm. And I feel like this is a recurring theme in the podcast is what is happening to our world for profit.
And I think the mental health space is rife with it. We've got people in communities just like Stuart's and the places that he flies to where he takes his book and he has these conversations with people who haven't seen a counsellor or a psychologist. They don't have one in their area. They can't access it. There's no public transport. These people live on cattle stations that take them days to drive to a town. But even if they get to the town, there's no access to a counsellor. There's no access to a psychiatrist. We're telling people to reach out, help yourself. You know, there's resources out there. That's great if you live in the centre of Sydney. I'm here in are we classed as rural? We're a city.
I think we're regional.
And I have an ongoing relationship with a psychologist, but still now, if I need to make a booking and I haven't been doing it on a fortnightly basis, which sometimes I might go 12 months where I don't need to speak to someone or don't need counsel, and then things might get a bit topsy-turvy for me and I'll want to make another booking, I might need to wait 3 months to get in to see her and I'm already on her books. If it's somebody who has just entered into an unexpected crisis that they never saw coming, they might wait 12 months to talk to someone. And that's in regional and city Australia. What about the people that you're visiting out there, Stuart? What are they saying about their access to services?
Everyone's conceded defeat is pretty much what it is. I have conversations with some of our customers and particularly a couple of our wealthier customers, just because the numbers are real, and I know that if that was ever laid out to them as an opportunity, so far it's been 100% yes. And I've talked about that at some point in time, my vision for Australia's health is that rather than just having private health insurance, is if you go and get 100 people from one community or families, cousins, however you want to call it, within a QE of each other, and they all contributed a base amount of money per week, that pool would grow quickly. And from within that pool, we'll have our own personal nurse, we'll have a GP that's on call, we'll have a nurse practitioner, we might have a psychologist, and that 100 people have now basically funded their way to the top of the line by creating their own system. And that doesn't need to be expensive. Is that when you put people together, and even if it's only like $5 or $10 per person per week, and you put 100 or 200 of those together, is I might not need that service at all in the year. So there'll be a triaging system that happens all the time. And I think that's going to end up being a future model where a cohort of 200 or 300 people go, you know what, we can replicate what they've done at Coonabarabran, and they've got it down there and they've managed to get themselves a doctor and a nurse and a psych and whatever else we need. That's non-emergency. Like, if you cut your arm off, well, then you know where to go, or you break your leg. But for all that other stuff is, for me right now, I've just done my third trip in a row where it's a 9-hour round drive to go and see my doctor. 9 hours. Oh. People don't believe. And when I come back, I'm cooked because of all my other things going on in my life. Like, I'm actually exhausted for 24 hours after that for having done the whole process. But that's what I'm up against. If I could be in that system for $5 or $10 a week, I'd comfortably be in it. And when I talk to the farmers, I don't want to talk it up as though it's $1,000 a week and they're millionaires and they should fund it. It's like, no, we should all be proportionately in there and create a system so that we can, because there's nothing. There's nothing. Yeah, in the regional areas, is I think the solution's the same again. It's staring us in the face. So my middle son's done a double degree, and his HECS debt is getting dearer, not cheaper, because of the way that it's set up, which is just remarkable that the debt can rise annually rather than it's a fixed price. It's like the service has been delivered. But if the government just said, righto, you can do your degree in lane A traditionally, or you can do your degree in lane B, and we will fund and tear up your HECS debt if you'll go and do 5 years on completion in a regional or rural town. We will pay for your training if you'll commit to a period of time in a town of 50 or 500 or 5,000. But if you stay in the city where all the work is and the fun is and the beaches are and all the other bits and pieces, no worries. Good. It's your choice. You don't have to hop into lane B. But if you want to hop in lane B, then we'll fund it. I believe that that's only one cycle of 7 years. It's that simple. It's like, what would it be worth to the country to have an extra 1,000 GPs all of a sudden in 7 years' time that are now committing to being Bunbury in Western Australia or somewhere down in Tassie or out back in Northern Territory? And they go, why not?
And what a beautiful experience. Like, you've made the sea change. I often come home from work trips out west and come back to my family and say, let's go. They're not as keen as me, but that community, you don't get it. You say we're regional. We don't got it.
No, and I can tell you that I Googled real estate in Deepwater on the way home.
Of course you did.
There's a magic in
Absolutely.
Regional communities.
Absolutely,
and
there is.
Stuart, I just want to say, I feel, talking about being prickly and vinegar, and like I've been prone to die on a hill over things. I feel when we're sold that we live in the lucky country, I feel the enormous weight of listening to a man say, I will carry this train on my back, and our government not having the same mentality. Scott Morrison stood up at the start of his prime ministership and said, I'm going to reduce suicide in this country to 0, and then did nothing.
Academia can only take you so far. At the end of the day, you need to be able to learn how to tie shoelaces. And I think today there's too many people that can teach you how to tie theirs, but they can't tie their own.
And this is the power of lived experience and the importance of you and me and people just like us sharing our stories, because there should be nothing about us without us. People making decisions about the mental health processes and procedures in this country should not be making decisions without the voices of people with lived experience.
Yeah, and I think it's still tokenism. I think they're like, yep, we've filled that spot. We've got a person over here that's got lived experience, and that's all well and good. But until it's actually embraced wholeheartedly, it's just tokenism. Until we can get people to think about this as lights and sirens, it's emergency time. This is worse than COVID. In Western Australia, when COVID hit, the Premier went and scooped all the homeless people off the street and put them up in 5-star hotels to keep the city safe. It's like, why did it take COVID to do that? Like, why didn't you do that 5 years ago?
Yeah.
So people can do stuff. It's just teaching them to bloody do it.
If there's one message that you can leave for others, 2 aspects to it. One, people who are, looking into a wagon and seeing someone's not doing okay. And for people who are listening that might be hanging by a thread themselves, laying in the back of the wagon, not doing okay. What's the 2 things you want to leave listeners with?
I was already thinking of 4 things.
Give me 4 then.
Do you understand sort of how victim blaming works a bit?
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like when people are in a crisis, that it's sort of, I draw the parallels to victim blaming. Is it like you're in the the darkest corner of your life. You've got a black cloud over you, and it's your job to reach out to us and tell us. So I feel that's a bit victim blaming.
Mm. It's a lot of responsibility for someone who might be struggling to brush their teeth every day.
Absolutely. And the emphasis to me is like, it's been great, that society's trying to get the conversation going, reach out, all that sort of stuff is like, and I feel like, no, that was stage one. Stage two is we've got to teach greater society to reach back. When you see it, reach back. Don't ignore it. Don't walk past. Be that accidental counsellor. You don't need any training. You just need an ear. All you have to do is listen and hold space is the first thing. If you can leave this podcast and be exposed to a situation, just listen. Don't say a word. Just listen and hold space and let a person unload. That in itself will make a profound difference to that person's life and might just keep them alive. So I'm not answering your questions. Something else that's part of all this, you said to leave two things, is I have a strategy for this country. We've just retained a publicity firm to try and bring a bit more awareness to what we're doing, because we know we're getting the results, but we're still below the radar. No one really has heard about us, realistically. And whilst the book's now in its 9th reprint, about to be 10th, and more than 50,000 copies, like, there's a part of me goes, it should be 500,000 already. Then we'll start to make a dent. At 50,000, we're scratching the surface. So all the talk, and it's just come out with the ABS in the last couple of days. You might have seen it floating around the internet. There's like 3,200 suicides. I don't think we need to ignore that number, but I don't think it's the number that we need to focus on. Every 9 minutes, someone has an attempt. Every 9 minutes. Next time you're laying in bed and you press the snooze button and you wait for your alarm to come back on, at that 9th minute, be aware that somewhere in Australia, someone's just tried to take their life. So there's 58,000 people in Australia that are trying to succeed with it. If we could halve that number, then we halve suicides. Trying to work out how to halve the 3,200, I think, is an impossible way of thinking. I think we've got to look at how do we halve the 58,000? Because if we can fix that part and stop people even attempting, then we're going to start to put a dent in it. So my message is, if you see it, do something. Don't walk past, please.
Yep. And Stuart has created a tool to be able to help people do something. So I mentioned before that Stuart has given me 15 copies of his book. He had a little strategy behind this. What I'm going to ask people to do is share this episode on their social media. I don't care where you share it, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. Screenshot that you've shared it and send it to me. And the first 15 people to do that, I'm going to send a book to. So send me the screenshot, your address, and then those people will get the book. For the people outside of that who aren't fast enough, I want you to spend the $16.95 that it costs to buy Stuart's book. And it is beautiful. Read it yourself and then pass it on to someone else. And if you want to own a copy of it forever for yourself, then buy 2, because you get a deal if you buy a couple, don't you, Stu, on the website?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Buy yourself a couple. Keep one for yourself. And then the other ones belong to the universe. They don't belong to you. And as part of us, everyday people without mental health training, we will make ourselves the accidental counsellors with a toolkit that we can hand to somebody if we don't have the right words, and we can start that here. We can start to cut that down, that one person every 9 minutes, because when that person can find the reason, and Stuart's book will help them do that, when that person can find the one reason to stay alive today, that's one attempt that comes off that number. I think we give up currently on relying on our government and our health system and our mental health system to make the change because we've left it in their hands for such a long time. Let's try a different approach. Let's take this book into the world. We'll be just a band of little soldiers and we will try and reduce that number ourselves.
New tattoo?
I've already thought about it.
Just one reason.
I wouldn't be the only person with a just one reason tattoo, would I, Stuart?
No, I think there's about 5 people now that have got just one reason tattoos. One of them is like, it's big, it's huge, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Megan has watched me train and do the work and want to lend myself to the suicide prevention space. My voice, my skills, I don't care how I help. I put my foot in and then something happens and I pull it out because it doesn't look the way that I think it should look. I have never seen something, Stuart, that is so practical, something that I'm so passionate about. We are behind you 100% with everything that you're doing. Anytime we can help, I want to be involved because I love this approach. And for men especially, the thongs and footy shorts work, mate, because they would much prefer to sit in a pub across from someone in shorts and thongs and feel comfortable talking in that way than they are in an office with expensive artwork and expensive suits and university degrees. I'm not saying that that's not necessary at times. 100% it is. But you've got to start somewhere. And I'm so inspired by what you're doing and how you're moving through the world. And I'm so grateful that you found your reason because if you didn't, this wouldn't be here and the people that you're helping, you know, they might not be here too. So thank you for your work and your bravery and for holding space for everyone.
Thanks so much, Megan and Shannon. Like, you know, I really, really enjoyed not just today, but I'm a podcast addict. And so I've listened to a fair few of yours already now. And there's something that resonates in nearly everyone that I've listened to so far, even though you have your girly banter and it's a bit of fun stuff. It's like, you know, you cut to the chase at some point in all of your podcasts and you guys have nailed that. And I'm pleased that you came out of your way to find us at the pub. I'm pleased that we've met and I'm pleased that all 3 of us are alive.
All right, let's take a collective breath together. Because that was a lot and there was some big stuff in there, but what an inspiring man. Conversations like this don't just sit politely in your ears. They land in your chest. They stir things you maybe hadn't looked at in a while. And that's the whole point of sharing stories like Stu's. Not to make anyone uncomfortable, but to remind us that silence has never saved a life. People have. Listening to Stu today, his honesty, his grit, his absolute belief that connection and that having just one reason can pull someone back from their edge, it's a reminder that we don't need perfect words to show up for each other. We just need to try, we need to notice, and we need to check in again. And maybe that's the big takeaway. In my experience, women tend to circle the wagons without thinking, but men, they need permission. Men need spaces like the Top Pub, where they can sit down, drop their armour, and be a human being for 5 minutes. Sometimes that's all it takes for the weight to shift just enough for someone to keep going. If Stu's story reached you today, let's do more than let it sit in your headphones. Let's change one tiny thing. The way you text a mate, the way you ask, how are you really, and the way you show up when someone goes quiet. I encourage you to head to Stu's website, justonereason.com.au, and buy a copy of his book. Read it, keep it in a safe place, the drawer of your desk, the glove box of your car, ready for your turn to circle the wagon. You don't need the right words when you can hand someone this book. It was written with love and no judgment. Pass it on with love and no judgment. and then check back in with love and no judgment. Asking, have you found your one reason, is a small question that holds enormous capability for conversation and connection. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for caring about suicide prevention as much as we do. And thank you to Stu for the book, the advocacy, for the pub, and for the courage to speak the hardest parts of his story out loud.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of If These Trees Could Talk. If you would like to access more about the places or information included in today's topic, please visit our website ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. If you would like to follow us on our adventures, check us out on Facebook or Insta. Our creative writer is Shannon Walters, and our podcast is produced at Bellevue Studio in the Hunter Valley with audio production by Megan Anderson. We love to hear your feedback, so please rate and review, and if you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We look forward to you joining us for our next adventure.